Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Werewolf Street Rumble. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I saw a werewolf street fight when I was 14 or 15 years old, back in the late 1980s. I have been trying to remember exactly where this happened, but it's been taking me some time because I'm not in touch with the other people who were there when this all happened way back when. Like my sister, I think my sister was there, but she's not speaking to me. I know my former best friend was there, but I'm not speaking to him. The rest of the people who saw it were not people I knew, and I would guess they were residents of the town of Iron River, although they might have been visiting as I was. We saw a number of large animals, and they looked nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. Years later, I was with my kid watching some sort of comedy horror movie for kids with Jack Black in it. I forget what it was called. They had these werewolves in the supermarket in that kids film that were just like what I had seen in Iron River back then, although the ones we saw weren't cartoons, and they were nastier than the movie versions. I guess the main reason it's taken me so long to put this together, besides the reasons I already mentioned, is that this wasn't my hometown, or even my home state, and it wasn't the hometown of the guy who had dragged me to this birthday party either. See, I had been staying for some weeks that summer with my friend we'll call Colbo, whose parents were friends with my mother. Both my parents were fighting, and Mom wanted me and my sister to hear as little of it as possible. So she sent us to stay with Colbo and his mom in Eau Claire, which is in northwestern Wisconsin. Colbo's friend was having a birthday party all the way up in Iron River, which is in northern Michigan. Or it might not have been Colbo's friend, but this was one of those teenage parties where no adults were going to be near. So word spread through the teenage grapevine, and Colbo found out about it. It was our chance to do adult stuff, so we made up some fake place we said we were going. Then we met with Colbo's friends who had borrowed someone's parents' car, and off we drove to Nomo to experience a taste of grown-up style partying. Now, the house where this happened was not the last house on the end of the block, but I remember that we were all running out to the woods nearby and acting crazy. I don't remember if there was some reason we were out of the house. I think it was just that we were new to partying, and we were all out of our heads. But, maybe a neighbor complained of the noise or something, I just can't remember. I do remember us walking out to the woods, acting like we were insane people, and having the time of our lives, celebrating the birthday of some girl we didn't know, or at least I didn't know. It was in those woods when we first noticed that we weren't alone in there, and in fact we had accidentally gotten way too close to someone else's gang fight. I don't mean other teenagers either. I don't even mean other humans. I mean a couple of gangs of these werewolf-looking creeps, these hairy mofos with dog ears up on top of their heads, even though they stood on their back legs, and they fought with paws that looked way too much like hands for my taste. Hands with these dagger-like claws at the ends of the fingers. Have you ever seen a kangaroo's front claws? Well, imagine a 5-fingered version of that, and you'll understand why the bunch of us beat it out of those woods when we saw these werewolves, or whatever you want to call them, heading in our direction. Sometimes it seemed there were 4 or 5 of the creatures. Other times it seemed like there were 7 or 8. But they ran around so fast, chasing each other into and out of the woods over and over in circles, that other times I only saw 2 or 3 of them at once. They were the fastest land animals I had ever seen, appearing almost like a blur when they moved around, trying to do damage to each other. There was a bear-like brown pack, and there was another pack that was gray to black, so they were sort of wearing their team uniforms, you might say. The brown ones looked really a lot like bears, but no bear moves like these creatures were moving. I don't just mean they were fast either. They seemed completely natural on 2 legs, and bears just don't. Their legs were too long to be bears, too. They were more like dog legs, and I remember that at least one of the brown ones had a tail like a dog. Brown bears just don't look like that. But their snouts were short, and the ears were smaller and less pointed than the black ones, so they really were bear-like canines, I guess. Or else a kind of a bear that's very much like a wolf. Well, that's not exactly right either, since these things would slap and claw at each other, with paws that were nearly hands. I've mentioned already that this party was in Iron River, but I am not absolutely certain where it happened. I do remember seeing a water tower, but it was off in the distance from where this was happening. It might have been right here on Boyington. I'm pretty certain it was on the west side of town, but this was almost 40 years ago and it was nighttime. I remember a lot of one-story homes that looked like Mr. Brady designed them, so I know it wasn't too far from here. It might have happened on West Ross Street, I'm not really sure though. Oh, there's the water tower. I never remember being that close to it, so this can't be where it happened. You know, this might have happened on West Division Street, right over by this big patch of woods. This looks a little more like what I remember. I can see the tower from here, but it's not very close. I think this was the block. There were these creatures coming out of the woods, like real-life scary versions of Yogi and Boo Boo. It was really creepy. And these looked like monsters, not like animals. They looked real, though. When one of them knocked the other down, they raised dust. They got dirty. It wasn't like watching a cartoon. And I know I wasn't hallucinating, because I kept watching everyone else reacting to what was happening. I was just as interested in the other guys as I was with the monsters for a while. Since I was so unused to feeling tipsy, I wasn't sure what was really happening, until a creature fell sideways on top of me, and I crashed hard into some thorn bushes. I remember being pulled out of the bushes by the others, but I was screaming incoherently, like a little kid. It was very embarrassing because I couldn't stop screaming and crying. There had been some girls at the party being friendly with me earlier, but that ended when I started weeping and checking myself for fleas and ticks after that Dogman fell on top of me. I did not do myself proud on that night. I remember going back inside the party house and being sick for a while in the bathroom. After that, I drank some cola and started feeling a little bit more awake and aware again. Once I could stand and walk and the world didn't spin around so much, I regained interest in what was happening outside. By that point, people had started emptying out of several houses into the street, and they were gathered in 3 or 4 main groups, watching the werewolves, who by that point were engaged in a full-on rumble, like you'd see in a Roger Corman movie or something. And these creatures fought dirty, sneaking up behind each other, grabbing at very sensitive parts of each other's bodies and not letting go. You can just imagine all the shrieking. These bad boys were not going easy on each other. They were clawing and biting and scratching, and I remember seeing dozens of big wads of dog hair all over the street, blowing in all directions. They were giving each other a good grooming, if nothing else. So I do remember talking to a girl and a guy who seemed to be from around there, and I was asking them questions about these dogmen. It took me a while to figure out that they didn't know any more about this than I did. They didn't know who these creatures were or why they were fighting. I walked around asking anybody there what the animals were. What were we witnessing? I don't remember anyone having any idea what was happening, just that it was a lot more interesting to them than watching TV, which was basically your one option for entertainment in those days. I mean, we also had books, magazines, newspapers with comics in them, radio, and TV. VCRs and Betamax had gotten pretty popular by then, but I don't remember if my family even had cable yet. I mean, I guess we did. There were no cell phones, that's for sure. There was one girl I saw there who I knew had to live there because she was filming it on her camcorder. It was kind of big. She had to rest it on her shoulder as she shot. I think it was VHS. I don't mean she was shooting professional video, but she was shooting these wolfmen fighting in the dark. I doubt you could see much on that video very clearly, but I'm certain that if that videotape still exists, you would be able to see some stuff you couldn't explain away. Now, I never got to see that video myself, and I never heard from anyone else who did. So maybe she forgot to hit record or something, I don't know. Maybe that footage is still sitting in her living room on a shelf even now to this day. Maybe just feet from where I saw her shooting the video. Yeah, or maybe the tape got erased or jammed in the machine. In either case, I would love to see that video today if it does exist. So these two different packs did not fight in the same way, even though they were both canine and both about the same size roughly. The brown ones were like living battering rams, charging forward, bashing everything in their vicinity. I saw one of them drop to all fours and chase one of the dark ones straight into a tree branch, which cracked off and fell. The bear-like Dogman then picked up that huge branch and proceeded to brain a series of the darker ones with his huge shillelagh. The dark ones, though, they moved in this sort of sneaky way, kind of slinky, sort of like cats. They went up on their back legs and down on all fours effortlessly, sometimes jumping onto trees sideways and running along the trunk like they were big furry Jackie Chan monsters. In the woods, it looked like shadows were coming to life, but this was just those creepy black-as-night werewolf creatures. Sometimes when they stood in shadow, the only thing you could even see about them was their eye shine, glowing this off-white color that really made them look supernatural. I mean, I don't think they were supernatural, but who knows? None of the neighbors said anything to me about having seen these in their neighborhood before, so maybe they just walked off a flying saucer that night. Maybe there was a portal in the area that only opened that one evening. Or maybe these two gangs chased each other toward Iron River from much further and deeper in the woods. I remember being amazed by the sheer strength of the brown ones, who seemed to be able to pick the dark ones up and throw them into each other, one after the next, without ever tiring. I saw them fighting alone, several black ones swarming one brown one. They had the bear-like creatures outnumbered at most points during the fighting, but this never seemed to bother the bulky monsters as they fought these living shadows. I'm glad I had already been sick in the toilet and cleared my head up by that point, so that I could understand what I was looking at least for a little while. Members of the Dark Pack used their hand-like clawed paws to climb trees quickly and drop down on their enemies from above. They were insane, like kamikaze pilots or something. They seemed to be willing to give themselves up at any moment for any reason. Their instincts for pack survival seemed to take precedent over their own personal survival instincts. But they also showed a great instinct for cooperation, continually swarming the brown bear Dogman, double teaming, triple teaming, ganging up on them but never really seeming to be able to turn the tide in this battle, which just kept waging back and forth. It must have been 2 or 3 in the morning by that point, and I had my second wind. When the fighting moved back into the woods, Colbo and I ran into those dark trees after the beasts, wanting to see more of this fight. The next thing that happened was Colbo was pulling me back very hard. I found this annoying, and resisted what he was doing. Then, a tree crashed down in front of me, coming from my right, going down to my left, whizzing past me so close that it gave me a rub burn on the tip of my nose. A few inches further forward, it would have crushed my brain into my feet. But that red, painful burn on the end of my nose was enough to remind me for about a week that I am a careless idiot. Colbo saw one of the brown ones slam into that tree and deliberately knock it over. It looked like the monster was trying to nail one of the darker wolfmen, but he was going to take me out instead. At least if Colbo hadn't saved me in spite of myself. At some point when we were under the tree cover, we saw the creatures change tactics, and the tide of the battle turned. Rather than continuing to fight as individuals, the bear-like creatures began to employ their own type of teamwork. They formed a defensive wall, blocking the dark, slinky ones from moving any further or deeper into those woods. Then, slowly, the brown wall of doom began marching forward, back toward town, toward where Colbo and I were watching this all playing out. When the dark beastmen started fleeing in our direction, Colbo and I gave up our hiding spot and began to try our best to get back to the house before the dark black Dogman did. I remember racing as fast as I still had energy to run by that late point in the night, trying to get back to the party house. I could tell which one that was because there were cars parked all over the lawn. It became apparent that we were about to be overrun by the werewolf creatures, and we were not going to make it inside. Suddenly Colbo grabbed me and pulled me again. This time I went with it, and ended up banging my head really hard against the top of this car door that my friend was dragging me through. Once I was inside, grabbing my head and moaning, Colbo reached past me and pulled the door shut, locking it. Then, bam, we were hit with a tidal wave of the dark black Dogmen, who swarmed above the car, banging into the vehicle with their feet as they ran over the roof, the hood, the trunk. We bounced up and down and sideways, and then the creatures had passed us. We looked in the direction they had come from, and we saw the brown wave of death moving toward us. The black Dogman had leaped over us in an almost feline fashion. It was clear from the dust that the brown ones were raising that they were going to run over us much more in the fashion of elephants than kitty cats. I accepted that my time on this planet was about to come to an end. I prepared to meet my maker, and I remember saying, "Sorry, Mom," as though she could hear me. I knew it was over, and I felt a sense of gratitude strangely. At least I had gotten to party like an adult one time before the end came. But then, a loud siren shocked me so much that I bounced in my seat and banged my head on the roof all over again. It was the police. I don't think their presence had anything to do with the Dogman Rumble either. I think it had something more to do with the cars parked all over this lawn and the loud music still blasting from the house itself. Before I knew what was happening, Colbo had the engine of that car started, and we were speeding away from the scene, heading west, with several of both types of dogmen chasing after us. I thought that Colbo had hot-wired the engine, but the keys were in the ignition. He had merely started the car up. I was looking out the window and watching the werewolves dispersed, worried that we were going to get arrested as car thieves. I asked him where the heck he was driving us. He said, "Home," as though driving a stolen car to your home made any sense at all to do. But that's what he did. He drove us home, parked it across the street from his parents' house, and then we went inside. He made a phone call to someone, I don't know who, but apparently it was a call to the owner of that car. So at least he knew whose car we just took our joyride home in. As I listened, Colbo spun a web of lies, each one more drastic than the previous one. According to this new version of reality, Colbo's dad had come to the party, picked us up and drove us home. So why was Colbo calling? Well, once we got home, you see, we saw the strangest sight we'd ever seen. Yes, this person he was calling, their car was parked right across the street from his home. Yeah, what are the chances, right? And the car keys seemed to still be in the ignition. So strange, huh? So then he hung up, we had a big laugh, and then we crashed out for most of the next day. I never saw any kind of monster ever again, except for my ex-wife and her lawyer, of course. But at least I got to see the Werewolf Street Rumble. Thanks to EP David for the stories we all craved. Please join me in thanking David Rollison for making this episode possible. David is a channel member, and as such he gets to see our secret uncensored members-only stories, of which we hope to put out 2 tomorrow, if I don't expire from the heat first. If you would like to help the channel, or if you would like to see those secret episodes coming tomorrow, in either case, you might want to listen to the wit and wisdom of our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.